Long before the great empires of the galaxy filled the stars, there was a rumor that floated between planets, a story so old that even the oldest races no longer knew where it began. They called them humans. No one had ever seen one. No record in any living archive could confirm their existence. Some believed they were only myths, a tale told by ancient travelers who wanted to explain the strange ruins found on lonely moons and abandoned asteroid stations. Others said humans were gods who once ruled the stars, then vanished when their power grew too great. For most people across the galaxy, the story of humans was just that, a legend. Something to laugh about in the markets or whisper about in the deep space mines when the lights flickered and the stars seemed too quiet. But legends have a strange way of surviving. They sleep in silence, waiting for the right moment to return. And one quiet night, deep in the uncharted edge of the Orion Arm, the legend began to wake. It started with a signal, faint, almost broken, hidden beneath layers of cosmic noise. The deep space sensors of a distant research station picked it up by accident. It wasn't from any known language or code. The signal repeated in short bursts, echoing through the dark. SOS. Terra, Fleet. The scientists didn't understand it at first. The message sounded too old, too human. One of them laughed and said, "It's just interference." Another tried to match it to known frequencies but failed. The signal didn't belong to any known empire or race. Still, curiosity won. The research station sent the data to the Threxian Dominion, one of the most powerful alliances in that sector. The Threxians were a disciplined, proud species, tall, scaled, and known for their order and logic. When their central command received the strange data, they thought it might be a trick, maybe even a pirate transmission. But one detail caught their attention. The message carried a signature energy pattern, one that had not been seen in over 10,000 years. It matched a human engine core. The Dominion ordered an expedition at once. A small fleet of scouts was sent beyond known space to follow the signal. For weeks, they searched through dust clouds, meteor storms, and silent debris fields. Every day, the signal grew stronger, and the tension inside the ships grew with it. The commander in charge didn't believe in ghosts, but even he began to feel uneasy. The signal seemed to move, as if something alive was calling to them. Finally, after nearly 2 months, they found the source. It was not a planet, not a base, but a ship, a massive, ancient warship drifted quietly through the void, scarred by time but still intact. Its metal surface was blackened by fire, its edges broken, yet a faint light glowed from within, like the last breath of something that refused to die. When the crew boarded the wreck, they found markings no one had ever seen before. Long, faded letters ran across the hull. The translator struggled for a few moments before producing a name. TSS Horizon, Terran starship. The air inside was thin and cold. There were no living beings, no sounds, just silence and dust. But as they walked deeper, lights flickered faintly, and a low hum began to echo through the corridors. The ship was trying to wake up. The explorers reached the central control room. Screens blinked, systems rebooted, and fragments of old logs appeared in bursts of static. The voice in the recording was tired but firm, speaking a language no one had heard in thousands of years. To any surviving colonies, "This is Captain of the Horizon. We fought them at Vega Prime. The swarm took everything. We are falling back into the void. Humanity endures. Don't let us be forgotten." The words hit the crew like thunder. Humanity endures. For the first time, the legend felt real. The Threxian Dominion brought the ship back to their capital world, surrounding it with scientists, engineers, and historians. Every piece of data was studied. They found images of Earth, blue oceans, green forests, cities that reached the clouds. They found records of human soldiers, engineers, farmers, children, faces filled with life, laughter, and struggle. It was overwhelming. These weren't gods or monsters. They were just people. Real people who had lived, dreamed, fought, and vanished. News spread across the galaxy faster than light. Every race had its own reaction. The Merkin scholars called it the awakening of myth. The Valari merchants feared what it meant. If humans once ruled the stars, could they return to claim them again? Others simply didn't believe it. The Dominion is lying, they said. It's just an ancient ship from some forgotten race. But deep inside, even the doubters felt something stir. Because the human story wasn't just about power, it was about survival. And every species, no matter how advanced, understood what it meant to fight for existence. As the Threxian scientists continued their study, strange things began to happen. The old ship started restoring itself. Systems that had been dormant for millennia came alive. Its artificial intelligence, ancient but resilient, began to respond to commands. It identified itself as Horizon Core Unit 1. When asked about its origin, the AI replied simply, "We are Terran. We wait for the fleet." The phrase sent chills across every listener in the control room. We wait for the fleet. Did that mean more ships were out there? Had humanity survived somewhere beyond the known stars? The Dominion's leaders debated what to do. Some wanted to search for the rest of the Terran fleet immediately. Others warned that waking old powers could be dangerous. But the decision was already beyond them. The signal from the horizon was still transmitting, now stronger farther. It was calling something, somewhere. In the weeks that followed, multiple long-range sensors across the outer sectors began detecting energy signatures. Faint, but growing. Each matched the Terran pattern. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy realized that humans might not be gone after all. And as the stars shifted, a quiet fear spread. The old story said that when humans rose, the universe changed. They were builders and destroyers, dreamers and warriors, capable of great kindness and terrible power. No one knew which version would return this time. On a lonely moon at the edge of the Dominion space, a young technician watched the sky through the observatory dome. She stared at the strange blinking lights far away. Not stars, but ships. She whispered softly to herself, "Maybe the legends were true after all." The universe was vast and ancient, full of secrets buried in time. But some truths refused to stay buried. Somewhere beyond the dark horizon, something human was stirring, watching, listening, preparing. And when they finally answered the call, the stars themselves would remember their name: humans, the forgotten species, the lost children of the void, the legends who had become real again. The news of the Terran ship spread faster than light. Every empire, every outpost, every deep space trader had heard the same story. The humans might have returned. For many, it was exciting, a mystery from history finally coming to life. But for others, it was deeply unsettling. The older races remembered fragments of the old wars. They remembered stories of how humans built weapons powerful enough to bend stars, and how they disappeared just as quickly, leaving behind nothing but silence. The Threxian Dominion, the first to find the human ship, decided to take control of the situation. They wanted answers and maybe power. The ship they had found, the TSS Horizon, was now safely stored inside a heavily guarded docking bay orbiting their capital planet. Teams of scientists, translators, and engineers worked day and night to unlock its secrets. But the more they studied the ship, the stranger things became. The energy readings didn't match any known technology. The metal of the hull seemed to repair itself slowly, like living skin healing over a wound. The computer systems refused to fully shut down. Every time the Dominion tried to power it off, it restarted itself with a faint message appearing on the screen. Fleet signal detected. Awaiting response. The Dominion couldn't trace the signal. It came from deep space, somewhere beyond their mapped territories, maybe even outside the known galaxy. One researcher, an older Threxian scientist with tired eyes and a soft voice, said quietly, "This ship is not dead. It's waiting for something, or someone." The command leaders didn't believe in legends, but even they felt something strange. The ship gave off a hum that could be felt through the floor. Not loud, not mechanical, but almost like a heartbeat. As the scientists decoded more of the Horizon's data logs, a picture of the old human world started to form. They found images of towering cities under blue skies, oceans filled with ships, and small homes surrounded by green fields. There were recordings of laughter, festivals, children playing, and old people telling stories by firelight. One of the crew whispered, "They weren't monsters at all. They were just like us." Then they found something else. The last battle logs of the Horizon. The messages were fragmented, but the meaning was clear. The humans had been fighting something terrible, a massive enemy they only called the Swarm. The recordings described their retreat into deep space, far beyond known stars in hopes of rebuilding. The logs ended with the same chilling message repeated over and over again. We endure. The fleet survives. That phrase, the fleet survives, echoed through every control room in the Dominion. If it was true, that meant more of these human ships were still out there, somewhere in the darkness, hidden for thousands of years. Soon, every major empire in the galaxy knew about it. The Valari Confederation sent spies to learn what the Dominion had found. The Merkin tribes began scanning the edges of their territory for any strange signals. Even the small, peaceful civilizations, those who rarely got involved in politics, started to whisper, "If the humans return, everything will change." A few weeks later, the Dominion's long-range telescopes picked up something unexpected, a faint glimmer of light moving between the stars. It was small at first, just a flicker, but it was steady. The pattern matched the same ancient Terran signal. The Dominion sent out a new expedition, a group of their best pilots and explorers, traveling in sleek silver ships designed for long-distance travel. They moved carefully, jumping from system to system, following the signal trail. The further they went, the quieter space became. No trade routes, no communication beacons, no life signs, and just silence. The kind of silence that made even the bravest crew members feel uneasy. Days turned into weeks. The signal grew stronger, then suddenly vanished. When they thought they had lost it, their radar picked up a massive shadow moving slowly through the darkness. At first, they thought it was an asteroid, but as they got closer, their lights revealed metal. Dark, heavy metal stretching for kilometers. It was a ship. Not one. Dozens. All of them old, silent, and drifting together like a forgotten graveyard of giants. The lead ship bore the same faded symbols as the horizon, the Terran insignia. Some ships were missing entire sections. Others looked like they had been rebuilt with different metals, maybe scavenged from other worlds. The fleet looked dead. But the strange thing was, their engines still glowed faintly. The explorers felt as if something was watching them from those dark hulls. No life signs, no movement, but the feeling wouldn't go away. They decided to send a small drone to scan the ships. The moment the drone touched the hull of one of the vessels, every ship in the fleet powered up at once. Lights flashed across their bodies. Energy surged. The explorers' instruments went wild. They tried to retreat, but before they could, a voice came through the communication channel. Old, broken, but clearly human. Identify yourselves. This territory belongs to the United Terran Fleet. The explorers froze. They had expected a recording, maybe a computer system. But this was a real voice. Someone, or something, was alive on that ship. Their commander responded carefully, explaining that they were not enemies, that they had only come to understand the old Terran message. There was a long silence. Then the voice replied, "If you come in peace, then witness what remains of us." The lead ship slowly opened its massive hangar doors. Inside, the explorers saw rows of human machines, drones, walkers, and cargo shuttles. Some were damaged, others still working, and standing among them were figures, tall, wrapped in protective suits, faces hidden behind glass helmets. Humans, alive. The explorers couldn't believe their eyes. These weren't ghosts or machines, these were living beings, descendants of the same humans who had vanished thousands of years ago. They had survived in the dark, rebuilding their ships, hiding from the rest of the galaxy. One of them spoke again through the radio, calm and steady. "We have watched your worlds for centuries. We stayed hidden because the galaxy forgot us. But now we have heard your signal. You found one of ours. The horizon. That means the old world remembers." The explorers listened silently, unable to find words. The human continued, "We have no wish for war, but we will not be forgotten again. Tell your leaders, the Terran fleet has awakened." And just as suddenly as they appeared, the human fleet began to move. Engines flared, and one by one the ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, gone before the Dominion fleet could react. When the explorers returned home, the entire galaxy was waiting to hear what had happened. The commander spoke before the Council of Worlds. His voice shook as he said, "They are real. The humans live, and they are not what we thought." From that day forward, everything changed. The empires who once thought of humans as stories began preparing for the unknown. Old alliances broke. New ones formed in secret. Every leader wondered the same thing. If the humans had survived in silence for so long, what else were they capable of? On quiet nights in the outer colonies, people looked to the stars and swore they could see faint trails of light moving between the systems, ships that didn't belong to any known fleet. The humans had returned, not as conquerors, not yet, but as a reminder that legends are never just stories. They are echoes waiting to be heard again. And somewhere in the endless dark, the United Terran fleet prepared for what came next. After the encounter between the Dominion explorers and the ancient Terran ships, the galaxy was never the same again. The moment those human voices echoed across the communication channels, something deep inside the stars seemed to change. Rumors spread faster than light. Some said the humans had returned with fleets strong enough to shake entire systems. Others believed it was only a bluff, that the old race had grown weak and was only pretending to be powerful. But one truth couldn't be denied. They were back, alive, watching. In the weeks that followed, strange signals began appearing across the galaxy, coded messages written in the old human language. No one could fully translate them, but one phrase kept repeating everywhere. United Terran Fleet, confirmed operational. It appeared on communication satellites, trade beacons, even inside the systems of alien military networks. No one knew how the humans were doing it. They seemed to be inside everything, listening, observing, and quietly preparing. The galaxy's major powers met in emergency councils. The Threxians, who had found the first human ship, tried to take charge, but other empires didn't trust them. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Where were the humans now? But the humans said nothing. They remained silent, as if the whole galaxy wasn't worth speaking to yet. Then one quiet morning, the silence broke. A massive energy surge was detected near the edge of known space, in a dark region no one had explored for thousands of years. The readings were beyond anything the Dominion had ever seen. Dozens of fleets rushed to the coordinates, each hoping to make contact first. What they found left them speechless. Out of the void emerged a formation of ships so enormous that even the oldest admirals couldn't believe their sensors. The human fleet had arrived. Hundreds of colossal vessels moved in, perfect formation. They weren't shiny or decorated like the alien ships. They were simple, dark, and built for purpose. Every curve, every light designed for survival and power. The biggest among them dwarfed entire cities, carrying the mark of the old Earth. A blue and white insignia that read, UTF, United Terran Fleet. The ships glowed faintly against the blackness, like a new constellation being born. When they stopped, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. From the largest ship came a transmission, a calm, steady voice speaking in galactic standard, translated instantly across thousands of receivers. This is Fleet Marshal of the United Terran Fleet. We have returned from the void. We come with purpose, not conquest. We remember what was taken, and we remember what was promised. Humanity endures. Those words rippled across the galaxy. Even those who didn't understand their meaning could feel their weight. There was no anger in the voice, just quiet strength, the kind that comes from generations of struggle. The Dominion tried to open a channel, but the humans didn't respond. They simply moved, slowly and deliberately, toward the center of the galaxy. Their ships passed through systems silently, never firing a single weapon, but wherever they went, people stopped to watch. For the first time in 10,000 years, the name human was spoken not as a myth, but as a reality. The humans had changed. They were not the same race that had once fought for survival in the old wars. Their technology looked both ancient and advanced, metal covered in marks of age, yet pulsing with energy that no alien science could explain. It was as if they had learned from time itself. Inside the fleet, life was simple but disciplined. The humans lived with purpose. Every person, from pilot to engineer, carried a sense of pride and unity. They had been forgotten by the universe for centuries, forced to rebuild among dead stars, living on what little they could find. But through all that time, they never gave up hope of returning. The children of the fleet grew up hearing stories of Earth, the blue world their ancestors once called home. They were told that one day they would find their place again among the stars. And now that day had come. Their leader, the fleet marshal, was not someone who sought power or glory. They were calm, patient, and deeply human, a person shaped by loss but guided by hope. They believed the galaxy had forgotten what humanity truly stood for: courage, curiosity, and the will to survive, and now they intended to remind everyone. As the fleet moved closer to inhabited worlds, thousands of alien communication channels lit up. Messages flooded in, offers for peace, demands for explanation, even threats. The humans responded only once with a message broadcast in every language. We are not invaders. We are not ghosts. We are what you made us, survivors. The message hit everyone differently. Some felt respect. Others felt fear. But no one could ignore it. When the Terran fleet finally entered a system called Elira, the nearest major trade hub, millions gathered to watch from orbit. The human ships entered the atmosphere in perfect silence, releasing small drones that scanned and mapped everything with breathtaking precision. No weapons were fired, no harm was done, and yet the presence of the fleet was enough to make every government nervous. One Illyrian reporter described the moment as like watching history breathe again. The humans requested only one thing: access to their old archives. They wanted to learn what had happened in the galaxy after their disappearance. The Illyrians, unsure but fascinated, agreed. Over the next few days, humans quietly walked among alien cities for the first time in 10,000 years. They wore simple gray suits and spoke politely, always observing, always listening. People gathered to see them, surprised at how ordinary they looked. Not glowing beings of myth, not monsters of war, just people, human, real. The markets buzzed with talk. "They're smaller than I imagined," one merchant said. "They look tired," said another. A child whispered, "They look like us." And that was the truth. They weren't gods. They weren't demons. They were reflections, proof that even after being forgotten for ages, the human spirit could still find its way back. Meanwhile, in the background, the rest of the fleet continued its quiet preparation. They rebuilt communication stations, reactivated ancient satellites, and studied every star system they passed. It became clear they weren't just traveling, they were reclaiming something. When questioned about their plans, the fleet marshal gave only one answer: "We are rebuilding the path home." No one knew what that meant. But deep inside, many feared what would happen when the humans finally reached the place where it all began. The galaxy had moved on without them, creating new powers, new borders, and new rules. But the humans, they had endured the darkness alone for thousands of years. They had learned patience. They had learned to wait. And now that they had returned, the stars themselves seemed to remember the fire they once carried. Everywhere the fleet passed, strange things began to happen. Old machines from forgotten times started to react to their presence, as if recognizing their creators. Satellites that hadn't worked in centuries suddenly came online. Entire planets lit up with energy readings that no one could explain. It was as if the universe itself was welcoming them back. But among the alien councils, fear grew. If the humans could awaken old technology that no one else understood, what else could they do? And what would happen if they decided the galaxy didn't deserve peace? The fleet marshal knew this fear would come. But they also knew that humanity's greatest power wasn't their weapons, it was their spirit. They had returned not to conquer, but to remind the stars of what it meant to be alive, to fight not for domination, but for remembrance. To build not empires, but legacies, to show that even when history forgets you, the fire of hope can still burn quietly, waiting for its moment to rise again. And as the massive Terran ships drifted across the heavens, leaving trails of light behind them, every being who looked up that night felt the same unshakable truth. The legends had returned. The old fire was alive once more, and the universe would never be the same again. The return of the humans had changed everything. Their fleet now drifted between the stars like a silent storm, calm on the surface but full of quiet power beneath. Everywhere they went, they left behind a wave of questions and fear. For the first few months, the United Terran fleet stayed neutral. They didn't attack, didn't demand tribute, and didn't claim any planets. They simply observed. They studied the galactic map, scanned communication networks, and learned how much the universe had changed since they disappeared. But the galaxy wasn't at peace. For thousands of years, Countless species had fought, made alliances, and betrayed each other. Power had shifted many times, and every great empire feared losing control. So when the humans returned, the old powers grew uneasy. The Threxian Dominion, the first to make contact with them, wanted to form an alliance. They said it was for mutual protection, but everyone knew they wanted human technology. The Valari Confederation, their longtime rivals, accused them of hiding secret deals. Even the smaller nations began to panic. To them, the humans were unpredictable, too quiet, too mysterious. They didn't understand what the Terran fleet truly wanted. Soon every communication channel buzzed with tension. Are they preparing for war? Why do they move their fleets near neutral systems? What are they building out there in the dark? But the humans never answered these questions directly. They only said one thing to all who asked: "We are rebuilding. Do not interfere." No one knew what that meant. The Terran fleet began constructing massive stations around old, abandoned planets. They restored ancient satellites, reactivated long-dead beacons, and built floating structures that glowed with quiet light. To them, it was simply rebuilding their lost network, a web that once connected their civilization across the stars. But to the other empires, it looked like preparation for something larger. And then came the misunderstanding, the spark that would set the galaxy on edge. Near the border of the Orion Expanse, a small alien patrol ship detected strange energy readings. They thought it was a secret Terran weapon test. The patrol's captain sent a message to his command, asking for permission to investigate. His leaders, fearful and impatient, gave the order: "If it's Terran activity, record it, and make sure they know we are watching." The patrol approached the human zone and launched a small probe toward one of the Terran satellites. The humans immediately detected it. To them, the probe was a potential threat. Their defense system reacted automatically, sending out a signal pulse that disabled the probe. The alien captain panicked. Thinking it was an attack, he ordered a warning shot, a single plasma beam across the Terran border. The beam didn't hit anything. It was just meant as a message, but the humans didn't see it that way. For centuries, they had lived on the edge of extinction. They had learned to treat every unknown threat as life or death. The moment the warning shot appeared on their sensors, the Terran fleet responded instinctively. Dozens of ships shifted formation. Energy shields activated. Within moments, they surrounded the patrol ship, not attacking but blocking every possible escape. The alien crew froze, terrified. The humans sent one short message: "You have crossed into Terran territory. Withdraw immediately." The patrol didn't wait to be told twice. They retreated at full speed, but the damage was already done. When news of the incident reached the galactic councils, chaos followed. Some claimed the humans had overreacted. Others said the aliens had provoked them first. Each side blamed the other. In the middle of all this, the humans remained silent again. They didn't apologize. They didn't threaten. They simply went back to their rebuilding as if nothing had happened. But silence sometimes is the loudest response. A few weeks later, the Valari Confederation accused the Terran fleet of expanding into their trade routes. They released images showing human ships stationed near their colonies. The Dominion defended the humans, saying those areas were unclaimed. The argument grew louder, and soon every empire took sides. All it took was one more small mistake to turn fear into confrontation. It happened on the planet Vorth Prime, a neutral world shared by multiple species, known for its massive trade hubs. The humans had requested permission to dock there, hoping to set up a small diplomatic outpost. The Planetary Council agreed, seeing it as a historic opportunity. When the first Terran ship landed, crowds gathered to watch. People wanted to see the ghosts of legend up close. The humans walked out calmly, their uniforms simple, their posture humble but confident. They greeted everyone politely and offered trade agreements, technology exchanges, and peace. Everything went well for the first few days. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. Some alien merchants accused the humans of spying. Others whispered that the Terran ships were secretly scanning the planet. None of it was proven, just rumors spreading faster than facts. Then one night, a group of local security drones malfunctioned near the Terran landing site. The drones fired warning flashes into the sky, startling the guards. The humans thought it was an attack and activated their defense shields. The local forces responded immediately, surrounding the area. Within minutes, panic spread through the city. People ran, alarms blared, and news broadcasts filled every screen. Terran fleet under attack on Vorth Prime. By dawn, the situation had gone far beyond control. The Terran ships took off, leaving the planet quietly, but the damage to their reputation was done. Across the galaxy, headlines screamed, "Humans bring chaos wherever they go. Ancient species too dangerous to trust." The galaxy began to divide. Some worlds wanted to welcome the Terrans and learn from them. Others wanted them gone. For the humans, the choice was painful. They had come not to rule, but to reconnect. Yet now they were being painted as threats again. Inside the fleet's command chamber, their leader addressed the officers. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with frustration and disbelief. "We tried peace," they said quietly. "We offered respect. But they still see us as shadows of the past. If we must defend ourselves, we will. But we will not start what they expect us to start." The word spread through the ranks like a quiet promise. And then, something unexpected happened. A message arrived, and not from the great empires, but from a small forgotten colony world on the edge of the galaxy. It was a recording from a young worker, speaking softly into an old transmitter. "If you are really human, if your people once lived on Earth, please know that some of us never forgot. We still tell stories about you, stories of hope. Don't give up on us." The message touched everyone who heard it. Even the most battle-hardened officers fell silent. For centuries they had been alone, thinking no one remembered. And now a stranger from a distant planet was telling them that their story had survived, carried in whispers through generations. That single message reminded them why they had come back. The fleet marshal stood before the great window of the command deck, staring out into the endless dark. Stars shimmered like distant fires, and somewhere among them Earth waited, their forgotten home. "We came to find our place again," the marshal said softly. "If they fear us, we will show them who we truly are. Not destroyers, not ghosts, but builders of light." The officers nodded quietly. The spark of anger that once burned in their eyes was replaced by something deeper: determination. From that day on, the Terran fleet changed its course. They began focusing less on proving themselves to the galaxy and more on reconnecting lost human colonies scattered across the stars. But even as they tried to stay peaceful, the rumors of war continued to grow. The great empires, unable to trust each other, built larger fleets, trained more soldiers, and waited for the inevitable. And in the distance, among the cold stars, the Terran ships kept moving, calm, unshaken, and full of quiet strength. Because they knew something the galaxy had forgotten. It doesn't take explosions to start a war. Sometimes all it takes is fear, and once fear begins to spread, it's almost impossible to stop. The spark had been lit, and soon the echo of that spark would shake the entire galaxy. The galaxy had grown restless. The spark that started on Vorth Prime had spread like a silent wave. Rumors filled every system, every port, every marketplace. Some said the humans were preparing to fight back. Others said they were building something vast, a hidden power in the shadows of uncharted space. But what no one could deny anymore was that the humans had changed the balance of the stars. The United Terran Fleet didn't seek to rule or destroy. Instead, they began to move quietly through forgotten corners of the galaxy, places where no one else cared to go. Dead moons, abandoned colonies, old mining worlds left to decay. Where others saw ruins, the humans saw possibilities. They started rebuilding. Small settlements turned into working outposts. Broken machines came back to life. Old energy stations, once thought useless, began to glow again. And soon, life began to return to those forgotten worlds. It wasn't grand or dramatic. There were no declarations, no speeches, just quiet work, humans and other species side by side, fixing what had been left behind by history. But the effect was powerful. People who had once feared the Terran fleet began to see something different. They saw a species that didn't talk about power. They showed it through purpose. They saw engineers helping alien children rebuild learning stations. They saw Terran medics offering aid to sick workers on forgotten worlds. The galaxy began to whisper a new story. Maybe the humans are not here to conquer. Maybe they came to remind us what we've lost. Still, the fear in the higher councils didn't fade. The powerful empires couldn't understand how a race that once disappeared could return and gain so much influence without a single battle. To them, peace itself looked like a weapon, and so they began their own preparations. Silent fleets, secret plans, long discussions in dark chambers. The humans knew this was happening. They could feel the tension, but they didn't respond with anger. They had lived too long in the void to act on fear again. Instead, they continued their quiet mission, to restore, to reconnect, and to remember. One of the first worlds to fully join them was a small colony on the edge of the known galaxy. Its people were poor and forgotten, their planet dying from lack of energy. When the Terran fleet arrived, the locals expected occupation, but instead the humans landed, studied the environment, and repaired the planet's old sun collectors. Within weeks, power returned. The colony's night sky, once dark for decades, lit up again with lights and laughter. One of the local elders looked at the humans with tears in their eyes and said, "You brought the stars back to us." The moment was recorded and shared across systems. It spread like fire, not as a military victory, but as a story of kindness. That story became the true reverberation, the echo that spread from planet to planet, reaching even the hearts of those who had feared them most. But even hope has a price. The more influence the humans gained, the more the great empires felt their control slipping away. Trade routes began to shift. Small colonies stopped paying taxes to the central powers and instead aligned with the Terran Reconstruction Network. At first, it was peaceful. Then came the pressure, political threats, economic blocks, and propaganda. On the news networks of powerful worlds, people began hearing new lies. The humans are deceiving you. They are building weapons in secret. They will turn on us once we trust them. The cycle of fear began again. The humans tried to speak to the Galactic Council, but their messages were ignored. They sent envoys, calm, respectful representatives, but many never returned. Still, the fleet refused to be drawn into conflict. The fleet marshal reminded everyone, "The galaxy may not believe us yet, but every act of compassion leaves a mark stronger than any weapon." So they kept working. They built bridges, healed broken systems, and restored long-lost technologies. And yet deep inside, even the humans knew that something was coming. One night, far from the center of civilization, a Terran listening post caught a strange signal, encrypted, distorted, but unmistakable. It came from beyond known space, the same region where their ancestors had once disappeared into darkness. The voice in the transmission was faint, almost like an echo. "This is Vega Base survivors, requesting assistance. Unknown forces, incoming." It was an ancient human distress call, thousands of years old but still alive. The fleet immediately recognized it. Vega Base had been one of the last human strongholds before the Great Collapse. The message shouldn't have been possible. No signal could survive that long, especially across the shifting void. But there it was, a voice from their own past, crying for help. The fleet marshal ordered a special team to follow the signal. They left quietly, moving beyond the mapped edges of space, guided only by hope and memory. The journey was long and silent. Space out there was colder, emptier, almost untouched. The stars were faint and the darkness seemed heavier. But the humans had learned long ago that darkness often hides answers. After weeks of travel, they found it, the remnants of a small station orbiting a dying star. The signal came from inside. When they entered, they discovered not survivors, but a message, a memory capsule preserved by ancient technology. It contained the final log of the humans who had lived there thousands of years ago. Their words were soft, full of exhaustion but also belief. "If anyone hears this, know that we never gave up. We fought to the end, not for victory but for the hope that someday someone would remember who we were." The team returned with the message and shared it across the fleet. Many cried. Some stayed silent for hours, but all felt the same thing: pride. That message became a reminder of why they had returned. They weren't just rebuilding technology or planets. They were rebuilding memory, the story of humanity itself. Back in the galaxy's core, however, fear continued to grow. The Valari Confederation accused the Terrans of manipulating hearts with emotion. The Threxians, once allies, began to doubt their control over the situation. Old rivalries reignited. Soon, smaller conflicts broke out between other empires, each blaming the humans in one way or another. Fleets clashed, trade routes collapsed, and chaos began to spread. Not because the Terrans fought, but because their very presence revealed how fragile the galactic peace truly was. The irony was clear. Humanity hadn't started a war. The galaxy's fear of them had. And in the middle of it all, the Terran fleet stood quietly, unwilling to strike first but ready to defend if needed. As one officer said softly while watching distant battles on the scanner, "We came to heal the galaxy, and instead we're watching it tear itself apart." The fleet marshal looked out into the stars, thinking deeply. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then they said, "Even echoes can shake worlds, but they can also teach them to listen. We must stay true to who we are." That night, a new message was sent out from the Terran flagship, not as a warning, but as a call for unity. It said, "To every world, every being, every voice that remembers what it means to care, join us. The universe does not have to fear us. Together we can rebuild what time has broken." Across the galaxy, the message echoed. Some ignored it. Some mocked it. But many, the forgotten, the poor, the dreamers, heard it and believed. They began reaching out to the humans, offering small help, sharing old maps, sending messages of friendship. Slowly, quietly, the human light spread again. The galaxy was divided, yes, but beneath the chaos, a new kind of movement began to grow. A movement not of war, but of remembrance, and everywhere the Terran ships went, they carried that memory with them. The echo of a race that refused to vanish. They were once only legends, then ghosts. Now, they were something more powerful, a living reminder that even in the coldest darkness, hope can still find a voice. And that voice was growing louder every day. The humans didn't need to shout. They didn't need to fight. Because the sound of their return, the quiet hum of their ships, the gentle light of their rebuilding worlds, had already begun to reverberate through the void. It was no longer just about survival. It was about meaning, and the galaxy, whether ready or not, was beginning to listen. The galaxy had never been so quiet. It wasn't the silence of peace, and it was the stillness that comes when everyone holds their breath, waiting for something bigger than themselves to unfold. Across the stars, millions of worlds watched the humans, some with hope, some with fear, and some with curiosity, because deep down they wanted to see if the old legends were true. The united Terran fleet was no longer hiding. Their ships traveled openly now, their silver hulls reflecting the light of countless suns. Everywhere they went, people gathered to see them, not to fight but to understand. And slowly the truth began to spread. The humans were not here to conquer or destroy. They were here to remind the galaxy what unity looked like, but it wasn't easy. The great empires still tried to twist the story. Their leaders warned their citizens that humanity's peace was just a trap, that their kindness was only a mask. They spread messages across the stars saying, "The Terrans want control. They rebuild so they can rule." But the ordinary people, the workers, the travelers, the small colony families, they had seen with their own eyes what the humans had done. They had seen broken worlds come alive again. They had seen Terran engineers share food, knowledge, and medicine without asking for anything in return. And that simple truth was stronger than any lie. Bit by bit, the galaxy began to turn. Small colonies declared neutrality, refusing to follow orders that would bring war. Some alien captains even switched sides quietly, escorting Terran aid ships through dangerous zones. The legend of humanity was no longer a whisper. It had become a heartbeat, steady, real, and unstoppable. Still, peace never comes without a test. One evening, as the Terran fleet traveled through the edge of the Orion Passage, their sensors detected a massive energy surge. An armada, not one but many fleets from the divided empires, had gathered. They called it a defensive alliance, but everyone knew what it truly was, a final attempt to intimidate humanity. The skies filled with thousands of ships. The stars themselves seemed to vanish behind their shadows. Messages crackled through the communication lines, full of warning tones and political words. "You are outnumbered. You must withdraw. You have disrupted the balance of power. The humans listened silently. Then their fleet marshal stood before the vast window on the command deck, watching the endless sea of ships. The crew waited for an order: attack, retreat, something. But the marshal only said quietly, "We didn't come to fight. Let them see who we truly are." Instead of raising weapons, the humans opened a wideband transmission, one that every ship in orbit could hear. A soft voice echoed across the void. "We are the descendants of Earth, a world that once vanished beneath its own mistakes. We do not come with threats. We come with memory. Every star you see was once touched by those who dreamed of unity. We are not here to claim the galaxy. We are here to remind it how to stand together." The message played again and again, spreading not just to the fleets but to every listening station, every planet, every civilian ship that happened to pass by. And something strange began to happen. In many of the opposing fleets, lower-ranking officers hesitated. Some shut down their weapons quietly. Some refused to fire. It wasn't rebellion, it was doubt. A feeling that maybe this war wasn't necessary after all. The commanders grew angry, shouting orders, but confusion spread faster than command could control. The humans didn't take advantage. They stayed still, engines off, lights dim, just floating, a calm presence in the chaos. Hours passed. No shot was fired. Then, as if the stars themselves were deciding, the fleets began to drift apart. One by one, ships turned away, not in surrender but in quiet realization. The message had reached them. It wasn't power that saved the humans that day. It was truth. The galaxy would later call it the silent standoff. No battle, no blood, only a change of heart that rippled across the stars. From that day forward, everything began to shift. The great empires, embarrassed and shaken, finally agreed to meet the Terrans face to face. The summit took place on a neutral station orbiting a golden planet known for its twin moons. The meeting wasn't grand, no flags, no anthems, no parades. Just leaders and envoys sitting across from each other, looking into eyes that had once seemed alien. For the first time in thousands of years, words of peace didn't sound like weakness. They sounded like hope. One of the elder representatives from the Confederation spoke softly during the talks. "For centuries, we taught our children that humans were myths, a story to scare us or inspire us. But myths do not build, do not heal, do not forgive. You returned and you showed us what we forgot." The Terran marshal only nodded and replied, "We forgot too. But sometimes legends have to be lost before they can find their truth again." The agreement that followed wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was a start. Trade routes reopened.
Shared research projects began.
Relief programs spread to the poorest corners of the galaxy. Slowly, barriers between species began to crumble, not because of treaties, but because of trust, and the humans, once just ghosts of history, became something new, the bridge between worlds. They never ruled, never demanded tribute. They simply lived among others, teaching, learning, and sharing. Their ships became symbols of peace rather than power, reminders of what the universe could be when fear stopped deciding everything. Generations later, when children looked up at the stars, they no longer asked, "Who were the humans?" They asked, "How did they make us remember who we are?" Because that was what truly changed the galaxy. Not human technology, not their fleet, not their history. It was their humanity, and that humanity had spread far beyond their own kind. On a distant planet far from the core worlds, an old Terran outpost stood quietly among green hills. Once a military base, it was now a place of learning, open to all species. Children of different worlds studied together there, laughing, building small models of ships that once roamed the stars. In the evenings, they would gather around a large screen that played ancient records, images of Earth, oceans, forests, mountains, cities once filled with life. Some children would ask, "Does Earth still exist?" And the teachers would smile and answer, "It's waiting. One day when we're ready, we'll go home," because that was the one dream still unfulfilled, to return to the birthplace of their kind. The fleet, now smaller but still active, prepared for that journey. Not as warriors but as travelers. They had spent generations healing the galaxy. Now it was time to rediscover their own beginning. As the day of departure came, People from countless worlds gathered to watch. Streams from every planet showed the sight, the Terran fleet, glowing silver in the golden light of a nearby sun, ready to jump across the void. The fleet marshal's voice was broadcast one last time. We were once just legends, stories told around dim fires. But legends are only powerful when they remind us of what we can still become. Wherever life exists, wherever hearts still dream, that is where humanity lives. We thank you, Galaxy, for letting us come home. The countdown began. A hum filled the air, soft, deep, familiar. The ships aligned, their engines shining like small stars. Then, with a gentle pulse, the Terran fleet vanished into the horizon of space, heading toward the place where it all began. For a moment, the galaxy was silent again. Then, slowly, the stars seemed to glow a little brighter, because everyone who had watched that moment knew something extraordinary had just happened. A story that had begun in fear had ended in unity. A legend that once belonged to the past had now become the foundation of the future, and somewhere across the endless darkness, the humans traveled home, not as conquerors, not as ghosts, but as the living proof that no matter how far you go, no matter how long you're lost, you can always find your way back. Their war fleet had once reverberated through the void, but now it was their compassion, their courage, and their hope that echoed through every corner of the galaxy. The legend of humanity was no longer just a story. It was a light out, and that light would never fade again.